is Rory O'Toole.
And my name is Matt Schultz.
And this is How to Be,
the podcast where we discuss ancient wisdom, modern hacks, paperback self-help books, and pithy platitudes,
in the hopes of figuring out the best way to live this one precious and wild life. Today, we're talking about etiquette. Is holding your fork properly simply classist? Or is there something refreshing about a society that says please and thank you? Join us as we discuss the pros and cons of minding our manners. Hi, Matt.
Hey there, Roar.
How are you?
Doing just fine. How are you?
Well, it's happening again.
What is?
The weather app is lying to me, and it's lying to all of us, at least in Los Angeles.
Is it being alarmist, or is it?
No. This is part of the great conspiracy against climate catastrophe.
I think it's possible that maybe you're just not as accurate. Your body is not as accurate a thermometer as you would like it to be.
No, Sam and I left this morning to go to the farmer's market, and it was a swamp. We were living in a bayou, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It was the sweat that I experienced, the sweat that he experienced, the thick fog of air. It's almost like your body's cutting through it as you walk, okay? That sounded like a slam poem I was saying. Then I come back home and we're like, ugh. And it says it's 45% humidity. Matt, 45% humidity is almost perfect humidity. You wouldn't notice humidity at 45%. Okay?
Really? I feel like 45% is high.
No, it's classic. It's you want that evenness. You want it around the 40s. That's below 42 dry. You're dealing with on the East Coast of Chicago in the summer, you're talking 70% humidity, okay?
Really?
Yes. Have you thought about this before and checked this out, or are you just
No, I really don't know.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. You don't know. I know.
Okay,
I'm obsessed.
I don't know about the
yes,
humidity
I am obsessed with humidity because it greatly affects my skin and my migraines. So I've been paying attention to these things for years and years, not just recently. Okay.
Okay.
Now, Google it. What's perfect humidity? I want you to Google it right now. What's like most comfortable humidity levels?
Okay. I do believe you,
No, you don't. You don't.
I do. Okay, comfortable humidity levels outside. Less than or equal to 55, dry and comfortable. Between 55 and 65, becoming sticky with muggy evenings. Greater than or equal to 65, lots of moisture in the air, becoming oppressive.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly yeah. Okay, so you're telling me it's on the drier side today, weather app? Also weather.com? That doesn't make sense to me. And I've been noticing this lately, that I feel that the weather outside does not match what the weather app's telling me. So then you tell me earlier that I'm loco. You said this earlier today when I was complaining about this. You said that it's all in my head. Well, today, what do? I go on Instagram. My friend posts a selfie, says, "It's a swamp out here." I said to her, the weather app is lying to us. That's what I said. She said, it totally is. Mine says it feels 74 degrees out, and it straight up lies. It feels like an oppressive 85.
Okay.
This was not a coordinated effort. I've never spoken to her about how I think the weather app's lying to me.
Okay. But, just because a couple of people perceive something doesn't mean it's true. Have you looked at other weather apps?
Yes, I have. What is weather if not perception?
Well, that's a great question that I often ask myself about the feels like temperature.
Well, see, now the feels like temperature in LA almost exactly always matches the real temperature because there's the lack of humidity in LA. It's dry. It's the humidity.
Wait, but hold on. You're missed the point I was making there, which is how is temperature anything other than what it feels like?
Right. I know people are going to say the particles in the air, yada, yada.
It does.
Yeah.
Someone that I was talking to recently had like an expensive paid weather app that they were like, it's supposed to be better than the other apps. So like maybe you want to get that. But I kind of thought that was absurd when I heard it. I was like, how much? But we really disagree about this. I don't think a person really needs to know the weather more than the perception. I think like stick with your perception, ignore the weather app.
Well, this speaks to both of us so much, I think. Me, I have to know that we're all on the same page and we have all live in a shared reality. You don't really, that's not as important to you.
No, it's definitely not. But I think you need to go out there and get yourself a little mercury thermometer.
Okay, but
Why
I
do I
also have
say
to get something
mercury?
to measure the humidity.
A human hair. Do you know they used to test humidity with human hair?
I actually did know that.
It's uniquely sensitive to humidity more than other hairs, more than like, a dog's hair.
You don't need to tell a woman that, okay?
But in case you thought there was like other women in nature that shared this problem, no, this is one of Eve's curses.
One of Eve's curses, yeah. Well, humans are one of the few things with hair. Everything else has fur.
Yorkies have hair.
Yorkies do have hair. We're proud Yorkie former owners. Both of us had Yorkies growing up, and that was certainly extolled as one of their major benefits. They have hair they don't shed.
Well, but I think you need to get a mercury thermometer. I'm stressing the analog because I want you to believe the results. I don't want you to think that it's part of the system of the weather app that's trying to lie to us.
Yeah, so my point is the weather app is lying to us, and I'm not one for conspiracy theories. I think we went to the moon, okay? The weather app is lying to us as part of a great climate catastrophe, denial, systemic thing.
And
I'm going that far.
Yeah, go there. And I support you 100%, even if I don't believe you.
I thought you believed all women. That's weird. Okay.
All but one. Here she is. Yeah, I like this because normally, like, when we argue about things, you're right most of the time about, like, I would say that, like, when we argue about, like, the way things are or facts, you're usually right. I feel pretty confident that you're wrong about this one.
But it's hard to prove. It's hard to prove
because our only source of evidence is the weather apps, which is why you need to get a thermometer.
You know what? I guess I will.
The old mercury
I am going to.
cigar.
And I will be sure to update everyone on the podcast about this.
Now, should we leap with great abandon and glee into today's topic?
Today's topic is etiquette.
I think I can sum up our culture's attitude towards etiquette in one single cultural image. The movie Titanic.
Oh, the 1939 version that we all know and love.
Actually, I'm talking about this little fringe one that they made just a few years ago in 97.
Okay, not familiar. Not familiar, but maybe I'll.
Directed by this real sicko, James Cameron. Fabulous movie. And the story is told through etiquette, really. We have Rose, and she comes from this world of etiquette, and she meets Jack, who doesn't come from that world. And everything that is appealing about Jack, James Cameron signals it to us. He portrays it to us in his very breach of etiquette. It's where Jack diverges from the etiquette code that we see how appealing he is to Rose and to us too. he spits, and Rose is like, I want you to teach me to spit like a man.
I
She
hate
like
that scene. That scene I have to put fast forward.
fast for yeah, I mean, it's kind of gross. It's quite gross. And then, she decides like this thing with Jack has gone far enough. She can't do this. She's engaged to Cal. She goes to the dining room and she sees this prim little girl just elegantly folding a napkin on her lap. Just so, you can tell that this girl has been expertly trained, like a show dog, like Siba. Um, and Rose looks at her and in something about looking at this little girl folding the napkin on her lap, that's what compels Rose to go out and meet Jack on the deck and say, I changed my mind. Oh, it really sums up how we as Americans perceive this thing called etiquette. Obviously, Americans have etiquette, but I think we don't think of our etiquette as etiquette. We think of ourselves as people who will spit off the side of a boat.
Well, I mean, they're all Americans on this, right?
Yes.
Even the upper class, the first class, and they like their etiquette. Emily Post likes her etiquette.
Yes, but even today's that's in America of yesteryear. Today's
I see what you're saying.
Americans like the hoodie thing, the tech billionaire not standing on airs. Is that an expression?
It's funny that you mentioned this, though. I would like to say that when I was doing research on etiquette author wrote about how he traveled to America from England and how in America, yes, there was etiquette, but yes, there was etiquette in America, but there was not etiquette among classes. So, for example, an upper class person would greet a lower class person, and a lower class person would greet an upper class person with a simple hi, hello. They would commingle more. There wasn't a lot of hierarchy or formality between classes. And he actually wrote that he thought that was actually worse for society because people didn't know their place, and B, it gave the lower class sort of a false hope that they were equal when in actuality they are not.
That's interesting. In my medieval history book, I listened to their chapter on etiquette today. And it's this book, The Time Traveler's Guide to Medieval England. It seems like from what he said in this book that it's pretty much the thing itself, the etiquette itself is deference towards the highest person in the room. Like, it was very hard to see if there was a there other than that. It seemed to be all about signifying, like, taking note of who's the highest in the house. It might not be the person hosting the party, just so you know, there may be someone higher. Of course
not.
There. And they, just because you host the party, that doesn't mean you get to sit down first. If there's a king in attendance, the king sit down first, and then, like Queen Elizabeth and Spencer, and probably in real life.
Well, the thing is that in America, we've never had such overt hierarchies like that.
No.
Maybe the president, but only when he's in office. I don't think people wait for Bill Clinton to eat before everyone else eats.
Well, so I went through this whole thing the other day. I was looking up the Jewish law about if you need to wear shoes when you pray. And it's quite interesting because it's all based on etiquette. So if you're in a place where you wouldn't wear shoes in front of a king or a high officer, so imagine some country where people are barefoot and the king of that land is barefoot, whatever.
I was gonna say, you mean like you're in his bedroom or something for some reason?
Yeah, no, like if the culture. And then I found like a thread about it online, and someone wrote, well, and it was from years ago. So someone wrote, I think Obama seems chill, so I'm going to pray barefoot. And, and then I was like, well, I'm just wearing flip-flops. I certainly would not wear these Adidas flip-flops in front of, if I was going to meet Obama,
Right.
it was very interesting to sort of think about, because a lot of this Jewish law stuff it makes reference, turns the relationship of a person to a king as a reference point for the relationship of a person to God. And it's very interesting to sort of think about that in relationship to a president, because we have such a less, we don't have that culture of formality here really at
No.
all.
And I mean, etiquette really isn't all about hierarchy or power. It is about class. Etiquette has been around since probably the dawn of man. It really boils down to just proper ways of interacting with people, ways that groups of people find culturally acceptable. And then it sort of evolves through, the medieval period and then again the Enlightenment period. It goes on steroids during the Victorian era. It starts to devolve after World War II, is when we become a much less formal society, a much more egalitarian society, at least in America. Famous iterations of etiquette, Confucius in other
Love
countries.
Confucius.
The Middle East is an etiquette heavy society.
Hospitality. To return it to Titanic, um, we, in this new era of informality, where egalitarianism is, certainly not an absolute reality, but a value, we see the lack of etiquette, the unmannered person, as sort of brimming with authenticity. Now, that's like another thing that our culture is nuts for. And I'm going to bring another cultural image into this right now. Pretty Woman. Her whole charm is being unmannered, the way she cackles when he closes the jewelry box on her finger. Can you do it for us, Roy?
No, I can't. Can you? There you go. That's yeah, that's everyone's favorite thing about prostitutes is how unmannered they are. That's why we all welcome them into our home as long-term guests. It's so
because they're going to
charming.
be in the tub with their Walkman and just sort of bobbing around, like it's very, there's something that in an authenticity culture, and I've talked to you about this before, that the difference between a sincerity culture and an authenticity culture. The sincerity culture is where you sort of try to live out your societal role with utmost integrity. So like, I'm a soldier, I'm a mother, I'm a whatever. And then you try to really do that as well as you can and make sacrifices on behalf of that role. Like that's what Rose's mother wanted for her. We're women, Rose, our choices are never easy. Live your role. And then authenticity culture, which is, I just got to be me, and we view etiquette as a barrier to authenticity. And my question for you, Roar, is it?
Um,
Long pause there.
well, it can be, of course. I think that there's something when you have to keep a formality between you and close friends, then and you're never able to show your authentic. I mean, it depends on how far it goes, I guess, right?
But like we have etiquette still. We just don't necessarily recognize it as such. Like, okay, I'm gonna engage in some like real cultural relativism here for a second. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent you that video of that protest in Tehran where women were taking off their veils.
Yeah, I didn't watch it.
Oh, it's very interesting. And men are, they're walking in public, unveiled. Men are yelling at them. Some people struck them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, like, well, is it just like an expanded sense of what naked is? Because in America also, like, you can't just walk around full frontal. We have parts of our body that we consistently hide from each other.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there's definitely also a huge movement to end that as well.
Yeah, and I definitely think that like if you walked like boobs to the wind. In America, people wouldn't yell at you or hit you. They would hoot and stare.
You don't think so? They would call the police though, because they would think that you're mentally ill.
Yeah,
It's such a radical, no, it's such a radical thing to do, to just be walking around with your toddies out, that someone would think you're on drugs.
yeah. Yeah, I definitely think people would have less of a conniption than the men in Tehran.
Over the veil gone. Well, I will say that in America, as opposed to other countries, especially countries where like religion is part of the state, we don't have the tie of etiquette to morality. Very most, someone who doesn't have proper etiquette is uneducated, perhaps, lower class. But for us, being lower class or uneducated isn't a moral failing in America.
But there are
Oh,
moments when that comes in, like we saw this recently with pride parades, which can be very, assless chaps, lewd dancing, and there are children present. Even though religion is not explicitly part of the state, people see that sort of um, blue, display as immoral, as you're corrupting the children, you're corrupting the public space.
yeah, but that has to do more with them being gay than them being improper, no?
Yeah, because you never hear it about the mermaid parade in Coney Island,
Well, I don't
where
even know
there's
what that is. You never hear about the mermaid parade.
exactly, there's a lot of breasts.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, what is etiquette when we're talking about it in terms of, sorry, what is etiquette and how is it related to manners? What do you think?
I think of manners as saying please and thank you, and sort of just being like a polite, nice, deferential person.
Mm-hmm.
I think of etiquette as more of a Byzantine system of social rituals
Mm-hmm.
that are designed to mediate relationships between people of different statuses,
Mm-hmm.
and people in different sort of very specific social situations. A dinner party, a funeral, whatever. You can be a very polite, well-mannered person. Indeed, Jack Dawson was, and
Mm-hmm.
still have no idea about the etiquette of the dinner table. Which fork do I use? Just start on the outside and work your way in.
I think that, though, our modern society could use a little bit more etiquette, because one thing that etiquette does, that we don't have any universal standard for, is helps to mitigate awkward social situations. So, for example, when you're at a party, I find that when I could really use some like standardized etiquette is when I'm trying to leave a conversation. You know,
Absolutely.
I'm talking to someone, maybe an acquaintance or someone I literally just met, and the conversation, I know it, I can feel it. We're both trying to get out of it. We're looking around, we're shaking our head, we're saying, yeah, I'm shaking my drink. And the book we each read a book. Um, as part of research for this, I read How to Be a Lady. You read How to Be a Gentleman. And, and it gave a great answer. It said, when you're done speaking with the person, you say, I would like to go get a drink at the bar. Would you care to join me? So what you're doing is you are giving that person an out. And if they do accept your offer to go to the bar with you, you can introduce them to someone near the bar.
Yes,
If
and how do we
only
introduce someone?
Well, what Bridget Jones taught us is we introduce someone with an interesting fact,
Thoughtful details.
thoughtful details. So I would say, this is Matt. He is a rabbinical student and he drives a Subaru Impreza. And what would you
Um,
say about me?
I would say this is Rory. She has two cats and a circle-shaped head.
They can see that for themselves, Matt. Are you introducing me to a blind person? Like Kamala, this is Rory. She's three circles lumped on top of each other.
This
She
is
most
Rory.
resembles a snow woman.
a stack of circles, balancing precipitously one atop the other. um,
Yeah, so etiquette can really step in and make, it's kind of nice to have a guidebook that everyone's on the same page about.
being on the same page, I think, is a huge thing, a huge benefit of etiquette. And I often wish there was, I was about to say, I wish there was an etiquette court, but there is. There's that Reddit page that you love, Am I the Asshole?
But yeah, you are also a magistrate of the etiquette court.
Yeah, and I often tell this story. I don't know if I often tell it. I often tell it to you. And like I was on a bus in Israel, and someone was listening to music without headphones from their phone, which, like, that's a whole other thing that I would like to talk about, is etiquette and technology. But I thought this was totally out of bounds. And, what I did was I sought consent from a jury of my peers to rebuke him. Now, how is that done? You make eye contact with people, you catch people's eyes when you roll your eyes at them. And then once sort of a quorum of people have expressed outrage, then a leader is elected through the silent movement of the eyes and the heart. And that leader is me. And
it's always you when it comes to, you love it. You're like, it's me, isn't it?
I turned around and I was like, excuse me, are we in your living room right now?
Did you say that?
Yes. That I should have to listen to your endless stream of prattle coming from your phone. I don't know what I said. And he was shamed and he paused.
That is hilarious that they chose a spicy representative. Most people would be like, would you mind turning that off or turning that down, please?
And then you get the thank you eyes afterwards. Eyes, you are my hero.
Do people bow? Was there a big clap or a little clap?
Flowers.
Did they carry you off the bus?
Like, honestly, it was just a little glance of recognition, but to me it was like in lieu of flowers, throw diamonds into my grave. It was just like such a glorious moment.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been called out for rude behavior in public?
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
Oh yeah?
This was like such a formative memory. I was on the Metro North to Sarah Lawrence after Thanksgiving break, freshman year, and I had my bag on the seat across from me. And this was not like standing room only. Everyone had a seat. Okay. So I wasn't taking up someone's seat, and I was cognizant of that. But I think I put my feet up on the seat too, which is rude. And as I was getting off in Bronxville, this man came up to me, an older man. He goes, "Excuse me, do you go to Sarah Lawrence?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And he was like, "I knew it. You selfish, stuck up, arrogant, awful, spoiled Sarah Lawrence kids. I knew the second I saw the way you piled your bags on the seat and cast your dirty sneakers on the on the upholstery." And I swear to you, I was like, it was an adult had never spoken to me like that. I was like, my parents' friends think I'm nice. I wanted to cry. I was like, please think I'm special, because every adult had always treated me like a kid before, which is to say, no one would ever be that horribly castigating and rude.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. And then I went home and I think I cried.
Speaking of poor etiquette at Sarah Lawrence, remember how those Bronxville high school students would drive up the main drag and call us lesbians or other gay slurs? And
I actually don't remember that.
And you were egged once? You and Lexi were egged?
I don't remember being egged.
Oh my God, really? You were really upset.
Really?
Yeah.
Gone, deleted from the memory.
I mean, who wants to be egged?
Did the egg hit me?
No, none of the eggs hit.
Well, that's good. I didn't, as you know, I didn't have too many pairs of pants to be switching out that year.
Yeah, that's an example of bad etiquette and bad morality, immoralness.
Yes. So etiquette and morality, I think we often get confused when we talk about these categories. I think things that we think are evil are actually just sometimes a violation of our etiquette.
Like what?
That when someone is rude, it's very possible to, or like not even when someone is rude, when someone does something rude, when someone violates etiquette, it's very easy to clock them as a bad person.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Interesting.
Someone cuts you off on the road and they're selfish.
Yeah. Well, okay. Old or early etiquette was kind of about what we would consider moral issues. I don't know if they consider them moral issues at the time, but say, let's look at medieval etiquette that came around. Chivalry was all about sort of encouraging men and teaching men to stop what we would call sexually harassing women. Don't touch women. They have personal space. Don't say lewd things to them. We would consider that an act of morality.
Yes. So this is something that I've often wondered, is other people's morality etiquette? Is etiquette what we call other people's morality?
Well, I don't know because, I said earlier when we were talking about the protests in Tehran that in America, it's not so moralized to me, etiquette.
Yes. But what I mean is, like, would someone else look at our culture and say,
Heathens.
No. You're not, you're
Sodomists.
You're not catching where I'm going with this.
I'm going to catch it.
You're not. You just
I'm
got to
catch you like a little Pokemon. Okay.
Would someone looking at our culture
speed it up? I'm dying to know.
Would someone on the outside looking at our culture see all these things that we consider to be the moral realm, asking for enthusiastic verbal consent before a sexual encounter, doing a sexual harassment presentation at work, posting a black square on one's Instagram page, all these things that we consider to be in the realm of politics and ethics. But to someone else, they might say, oh, that's their etiquette. And when we look at, say, Victorian culture and we say, oh, they were so like utterly ruled by manners, maybe they would look at it differently and say, actually, this is just what it is to be a good, decent person who treats others the way, we're supposed to.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, for sure, the caveman would think that asking for consent is going a little above and beyond, being a little snooty, if you will. Oh, you have to stand on airs like that with your wife.
You're with.
But yeah, I think in Victorian era, that's the most interesting era for etiquette because we got so into the minutia that it's sort of hard to imagine that they thought the proper way to use an umbrella could be perceived of as morality.
That's true. Yeah, you mentioned that there was a whole book about the proper use of the umbrella.
Yes, written by Robert Louis Stevenson.
Alan Watts, I was listening to an Alan Watts lecture the other day, and he sort of framed Zen Buddhism as being an outlet from Japanese manners culture. He said this is a culture that classically speaking, I don't know if this is still the case today, really believes that there's a right way to do everything. And it's also very concerned with social debt. If someone did this for you, what do you owe them? If someone did this for you, have you paid your debts? And you have this tremendous debt that can really never be paid, and this constant self-consciousness. And he goes, a culture like this, and I don't know if this is an accurate read about the culture, just as a little disclaimer to our Japanese listeners. But I think it's just an interesting concept. A culture like this that's sort of subsumed in etiquette needs an outlet. Enter Zen, which focuses on authenticity, spontaneity, absurdity to a certain extent, and above all, not being self-conscious. The dissolution of the ego.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's interesting to see what kind of you know where a manners culture flies its freak flag, where it gets its jollies, because there needs to be some sort of outlet, I guess.
Here, question. Would you rather go to an event being underdressed or overdressed?
They're both terrible feelings that happen to me regularly.
They are.
Yeah, I think I don't know. It's like if I had money, I would
Exactly.
say underdressed.
Of course, if you have money, you can be underdressed.
Yeah.
That's exactly the right answer. It looks so sad when you're a poor person going someplace really overdressed.
Yeah, that's the thing. Both work less good on the poor. My cheap little suit, ill-fitting.
Don't get near the candles at the funeral. It's going to start on fire.
But I'm not sure that we completely don't have a manners culture. I think we definitely perceive of ourselves as not having one. But something that no, Israelis are extremely unmannered.
Well,
It's a very blunt culture.
I wouldn't say we don't have a manners culture. I would say that we don't have um, sort of a classist etiquette culture. But
No,
we
but something.
absolutely have like acceptable ways of behaving and unacceptable ways of behaving. And one thing I absolutely love about American etiquette is the sense of personal space that you don't get in other cultures necessarily. So important to
Um,
me.
yeah, so yes, we're very okay. I actually think we are a manners culture because of personal space.
Mm-hmm.
Something Israelis notice when they come here, the smiling. The smiling.
We
Also,
paid
like,
enough for these teeth, okay?
we paid enough for these
If a
teeth, we're gonna
braces
show them off.
culture is a smiling culture.
Yes. And so the smiling is outrageous. I think that actually we have really like uh kind of intense standards about like personal space, not just in terms of physical bodies entering our personal space, but sound,
Well, yeah.
smell.
Oh, smell for sure. I mean, hygiene is one of the most important categories of etiquette to me personally.
Yeah, it is a
Like,
very rude thing to stink, right?
yeah, yeah. Everyone needs to take care of that.
Regarding personal space, I saw an article the other day. I did not read it, just saw the headline. The sound of gentrification is silence. And it was talking about, this phenomenon of like a neighborhood becomes gentrified, people start calling 311 more about noise complaints,
Mm-hmm.
things like this. So these etiquette rules, um, these sort of public etiquette rules about smelling your neighbor's cooking, hearing your neighbor's music, having people using their outdoor space in a boisterous social way are culturally specific, and the way that they are enacted and played out in our society is often very tied up with classism and racism, which I don't think we can get away with talking about etiquette without talking about how, in our country at least,
Probably in every country, unless it's like Saudi Arabia, where it's so homogenous.
Yeah, I don't think they feel that way in Saudi Arabia.
Well, that's a country that knows the rules.
They really do. They are they they're all on the same page. I mean, they're not,
And if
but
they're not, you would never know.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. There's sort of an agreed upon etiquette is an agreed upon standard, and that standard was created by a certain race of people and a certain class of people, and any divergence from that is to sort of to be highlighted as other. And that's when etiquette is at its worst, right? Is when you make people sort of feel bad about themselves for not having good etiquette. And indeed, Emily Post and most people with impeccable manners will tell you the worst etiquette of all is making someone feel bad about their etiquette. And that manners boils down to making other people feel comfortable, at least in theory.
Yes, which is why, like, something like don't chew with your mouth open has like a timeless beauty because it will always be gross to see someone's masticated food in their mouth.
Yeah, but you know what is so interesting? Because that even is cultural. Like back in the day in medieval times, I bet that wasn't gross to anyone at all.
No, it was. I read that today. He was like that whole idea, that whole stereotype we have of like the big leg of lamb and they're and
Oh, really?
throwing the bones. No, they had very strict etiquette about table manners.
Well, that's interesting because yes, a lot of our table manners are actually that old. Like not putting your elbows on the table comes from medieval times because and not medieval times, the dinner and tournament in the far suburbs of whatever city you live in, but medieval times, the actual time period was because you would be sitting at these long communal tables. And if you put your elbows on the table, you're taking up too much space.
I just think that as opposed to chewing with the mouth open, elbows to me, like I would like a contemporary ruling on elbows because
There
to me
is
that
one.
feels like
The rule is now you shouldn't have your elbows on the table when you're eating, which I actually think makes sense because you probably are sitting next to someone. And if you have like that doesn't work, but you can have your elbows on the table between courses.
yeah, thank goodness because it's a very natural place to put
Exactly.
them.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's a very specific feeling
Hmm.
being at like a white tablecloth dinner at like a wedding or a bar mitzvah and like having breadcrumbs in your elbow skin.
I've never experienced that ever. How does it get there? Like this part?
Yeah, like your
Oh, the
elbows are
bottom of
on
your
the
elbow?
table,
Oh,
and there's like a
interesting.
couple breadcrumbs like causing irritation.
Oh, maybe I don't do that because I just lick them up. That's a proper etiquette, right? Being a little
It
lizard.
really, like, to me, when I think of that, it's like I'm there.
Yeah. One of the reasons I thought chewing with your mouth open was maybe at one point socially acceptable is because picking your nose at one point was, and they made the rule change somewhere in the Middle Ages. I was reading. So
Oh,
certain gross behaviors grossness is culturally relative, and also subject to the relativity of time.
hmm, yeah. I think that
For
it's certainly possible to conceive of some culture where chewing with one's mouth open is considered fine. I think it's possible to conceive of it, but I think there's something sort of not inherently repulsive about it. And I think that the best etiquette, like the best that etiquette has to offer us, is connected to that shared reality. So like, we're talking about how etiquette can put us on a same page. I think that etiquette should highlight the same page that we already are on to whatever extent that we are. You know,
mm-hmm, absolutely, absolutely. Now, okay, in order for etiquette to really take off in our society, everybody needs to be doing their part. And one of the biggest questions I have about I come up against this tension when I'm reading about etiquette, and especially, and you're the same way, our both of our personalities.
mhm.
Okay. So, of course, the best etiquette is not pointing out someone's bad etiquette. So, I'm reading my book, How to Be a Lady. Emily Post says this as well. I mean, anyone who writes about this will kind of allude to it or say it explicitly. And it was talking about tipping. A lady tips 15%. I mean, this was written in the early 2000s. So now we can safely say 20, 15% for good service, 20 for impeccable service. She never doesn't tip. If she goes out with a gentleman who is perpetually leaving a bad tip, it is her right to stop going out with him, but she must never tell him that that is why.
Does it say she must not, or like she doesn't feel the need to?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay. A lady does not say anything to make her companion feel cheap, but if it continues to be a problem, she may think twice about going to dinner with that person again.
Okay, so it implies that you should not. It tells you don't.
It says do not do it. So
do not do it.
In a way, so this is a real situation. I'm going out with Matt all the time, and he is a stingy little stinge man. And he only leaves a 10% tip. And I noticed this, and then I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going to see him anymore because of this. Because I can't just tell him, listen, we're close friends. I have to end our friendship because you're a bad tipper. And I just can't stand it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that in a friendship, there's room for reproof, to reprove someone.
What about, okay, in a friendship, check for sure. But sometimes people take that stuff so personally.
Some people cannot handle it. And, oh, yeah, it's like, what do you do?
As someone who people do not like to hear this type of thing from, I can honestly say that the messenger gets blamed quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's very, no one likes to be reproved. I think I handle it more or less okay. I might get, a little defensive. I think a little defensiveness is bound to come up. And I think the reprover should be aware of that.
Yeah.
But no, it's a really good question. And that's why I think that etiquette is it's not really an active field of study in our society. Like, yes, you have these columns, you have Miss Manners, you have Dear Prudence, whatever. But I think we need a high council. We need our best minds deciding this.
Yeah.
We need a big circular table surrounded by people who represent all genders, all races, all cultures coming together and asking themselves this question.
Let's get RuPaul on this. Let's get Michelle Obama on this. Let's get, Cynthia Nixon on this. Let's get
you need some conservatives too.
Yeah, let's get Marjorie Taylor Greene on this.
Yeah,
let's get Don Jr. on this. Actually, Don Jr.'s girlfriend. She would be perfect for this. Guilford, what's her name?
Kimberly Guilfoy. Dear Miss Manners, our mother just passed away, and our father wants to bury her in a shallow grave on his golf course for a tax break. We love Daddy dearly, and Mom's dead, so she won't know. What do you think?
Miss Manners would say that if it's not in her will and testament, she has bad manners for not giving you explicit directions. Good manners is telling people what you want to happen after you die. But yes, you should try your best to fulfill her wishes as you see fit. Maybe nothing gave Ivana more pleasure than a tax break.
Than what?
A tax break.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. And you have to take context into consideration. But yeah, I think this intergalactic council would be able to, because obviously
it's intergalactic?
It's intergalactic.
Oh, wow.
As soon as it's only intergalactic in theory right now, but as soon as we are interacting with space creatures, then we're going to need to involve them in the council.
And they'll give us a good level of objectivity. So I'm excited to have that.
Okay, so the sort of heart of etiquette, as expressed by this book, is make people forget about the salad forks. It's about making people feel comfortable. That's the red beating heart of the thing. But in actuality, as you just pointed out, sometimes we have to weigh other considerations. There are other values that come into play, and it's very hard to do the math between different values. So like, yeah, you have a friend with bad breath, you want to tell them, but that will make them uncomfortable, but it might improve their life in the long run. That's why we need this counsel who can give us an answer. Can you tell that the rule about starting a dinner party late?
Yes. So one thing that etiquette does, and I think Emily Post in particular does this well, is she takes in the individual versus the group, weighs their needs, and comes up with some sort of a solution. For example, she says that when you are having a dinner party and one individual is late to the dinner party, of course, it's rude to start a dinner without everyone there, but this person is late. Other people are hungry. She gives you the exact amount of time that you have to wait for the individual to start eating, and it's 20 minutes. So everyone who's waiting for that individual, maybe they're late for a good reason. We don't know. They have to suffer for 20 minutes, but no more.
Yeah, and I love the ability to take a question that is sort of full of riches and depths and just say 20 minutes, like to give it an answer, bring it down to earth. The Talmud is in the habit of doing that. It's also a very Seinfeld thing. Seinfeld says tub is love. If you're on
Love
your
is
hands
love.
and knees washing the tub before your girlfriend comes over, that means you love her. How do you know if you love someone? Are you cleaning the tub? Like manners has, because life is this goopy, amorphous thing. Social dynamics are sort of these, we're talking about an I and a thou here. There's infinite depth in every relationship, and that can be a little overwhelming. And manners gives us the ability to say 20 minutes, come up with an answer, give a little.
One thing too is, when we're talking about manners, and you touched on this in the beginning, is that it is sort of the tension between the individual and the greater good. And, in our American society, of course, it's way more emphasized on the individual, but Confucius was all about the greater society, seeing yourself in a role and as a part of something bigger, your personal needs not being as important. In either of those societies, you're going to come up against that.
You're going to come up against what?
You're going to experience that tension at times.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So many of our greatest stories are about that tension.
Like
Billy Elliot. Leaps to mind.
Leaps, does he?
I mean, isn't every story that?
Yeah, maybe. Well, it's man versus man versus society, and man versus nature. Is that those are the themes or something? Freshman English.
Yeah, so both of our books had taste prescriptions within them too. So yours said something about not wearing too much gaudy jewelry.
It said this, I loved the way that it was phrased. A lady does not feel the need to wear 8 rings on her fingers.
Exactly. She does not feel the need.
She doesn't even feel it in her.
Mine was phrased similarly, but a little different. If a man feels the need to dye his mustache, I don't know if they meant like dye it from gray back to its original color or like dye it blue. It was unclear.
I think the former.
But he then he shaves it off. He nips that urge in the bud and shaves it off. So it implies that both of these rules imply is that our taste in clothing and how we present ourselves is part of etiquette. And I think on some level we know this is true, like what you were talking about, overdressed, underdressed. There's dress codes.
Mm-hmm.
How you dress can be a sign of respect or not respect. We talked about what shoes you would wear in front of the president.
Also, it's like a sign of if you get it or not. Like, do you get this polo match?
Yeah, yes.
Like,
Do you know where you are right now?
yeah, exactly.
But so there was this episode of Gilmore Girls that I'm gonna briefly explain where the rich snobby mom comes over to Lorelai's house and she has like a dancing rabbi lamp, like a little Hasidic Jew that's like, I don't know, sings a song and dances. Or maybe it was like a monkey clock. I don't know. And it turns
It
out
would be so funny if it wasn't a Hasidic Jew dancing lap and you just remembered it wrong.
both of these come in
Okay.
at different points. And the mother had given her these like fancy I don't know, like,
Candlesticks? Were they
yes,
candlesticks? Yeah.
they were candlesticks. And she traded them in for the rabbi lamp. I don't know where you do such a thing. And the mom says, I gave you something of taste and substance, and you traded it in for this. And it made me think, like, do we have grounds to say, and do we want to live in a society where there's grounds to say, this aesthetic is tasteful and this one is distasteful?
Well, it actually reminds me of and how etiquette can permeate every level of society. Like in 30 Rock, when Jenna's mom tells Jack that her birthday party is going to be a real classy event, so wear something nice like white jeans and a Dan Marino jersey. So just because you maybe don't have what is considered high-end taste doesn't mean you don't have a sense of what what is and isn't proper.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different content.
Absolutely. But do you think that like a lamp can be tasteful and another lamp can be sort of in poor taste?
You know what? I think it's so contextual. On Lorelai Gilmore, it works. What can I say? On me, I don't think it would.
If the Queen of England was coming over, what is there anything you would take off your walls?
Oh, if the Queen of England was coming over, I would leave. I would be so embarrassed where I live. Funny, it's like taste goes beyond etiquette. It's like having good taste is like a sign of intellect. It's a sign of culture. It's a sign of having your finger on the pulse. It says so much about you, which is why it's impossible for me to pick a mouse pad for my office. Well, sorry. Other people don't not feel that way. I feel that way.
That your mouse pad is like broadcasting.
Yes.
Everything about you. Well, I think, in this medieval culture that I was reading about, like, everything about how which direction you stand in and when you sit, all these things are markers of who you are and where you stand in society. And we live in a different culture, and we live in a culture where what you buy is, I think the consumer tribes are really in some ways our most vital
indicators,
our most vital tribal allegiances.
Mm-hmm.
Are you
absolutely.
a Mac or a PC?
Exactly.
Like those decisions.
Would you buy wall art from Home Goods?
No, but I've seen some nice stuff there, and I'm like, if it wasn't here, if I saw it at a flea market, I would think completely differently about it.
Interesting.
But yeah, I think like an alien from space hearing us say like, oh, I would never buy the wall art from Home Goods, but I'll put this crap on my wall that I do have.
That I found on the street. I found it on the street.
You're right. Finding it on the street.
Number one best way you can find something.
Yeah, that person very well may have gotten it at Home Goods.
It's like when you find something on the street, it's like A, you got it for free, and B, you have the eye to see something on the street. So in the
beauty.
Yeah, in my echo chamber, that's very, high status.
Yes.
In also someone else's echo chamber,
it's already framed.
Yeah, in someone else's echo chamber, like Paris Hilton, it's absolutely disgusting to do that.
Well, I often, as you know, I have floating people in my head that I'm talking to. I guess we all do. But sometimes I imagine Paris Hilton looking around my apartment and like being sad about it.
100%.
Like someone showers in the shower, so small. Like picking up like the Head and Shoulders and being like, I've never seen this brand before. Like, I bet she hasn't.
Rudeness. Some people get really, especially I notice this at work a lot, they take people's rudeness as sort of a personal insult. And a lot of times I think rudeness is just misunderstanding or miscommunication, sort of a lack of awareness of what the standard is.
Yeah, and I think also quietness can be perceived as rudeness.
Yes, that's actually one of I hate when people are like so mean to shy people
Yeah,
or mean about shy people. They would never
she's
mean
stuck up.
to them.
It's like she's terrified.
She doesn't have a lot to say because I'm talking too much. So
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's like I certainly don't want to go back and live in this Titanic era etiquette culture, but I do think that we've crossed a line with hyper individualism, and I think that when the self is the highest, like when doing what's best for you, when taking care of number one is society's highest value, and it really is. You know, I was telling you, I was listening to the audiobook of the Four Agreements, and he's like, the meaning of sin is when you do anything against yourself. And it's like, wow, we really believe that as a society too. It's like that leads to rudeness. But yeah, I think that our obsession with ourselves, how can it not lead us to lower others in our estimation?
and also be so easily offended by it, you know?
Yes, you've infringed on my sovereignty, on my ability to do
Yes.
exactly as I please.
Yes. That's why I think it sometimes can be important to tell people what you're like, oh, you're tipping 10%. And they're like, really? I thought that was what you do. My family always tipped 10%. It's like, you just don't know the normative
Yeah.
culture sometimes.
Yeah. Well, you
Well,
know,
and also like to, we're like a little bit, we're too, in a way, I feel like I would love to get back to like the austerity of not being like effusiveness being seen almost as bad manners, because the way that I have to write work emails, these exclamation points, oh my god, it's so embarrassing.
well, you know,
Just so
my
that
boss
people
just
know.
doesn't do that.
I love it.
And it's so rude. It took me
Is
so long to not be offended by it and just realize that it's who he is.
How does he email? He'll be like, can you do this?
Yeah. He'll be like, that was bad, rewrite.
The
And like,
confidence of someone to be able to do that.
yeah, and it's just who he is. Um, and yeah, the effusiveness of emails, all of the exclamation points, the transformation of the exclamation point as sort of a way to mitigate to counter as a counterweight to how emails can feel cold and be perceived as cold when they're not intended to. So like, smiley faces are fully a part of workspace etiquette now.
I would never send a smiley face in an email, except for that I
No?
have. And I hate myself every time I do it. You know what else I think is bad manners? And I might be guilty of doing it. Sending an emoji in a serious text. I'm sorry your dad died. Sad face.
Yeah, that is, yeah, it's like,
Emojis need to be written into etiquette books.
well,
That is
I
a
think,
problem with etiquette books, actually, is that they do feel a little antiquated.
yeah, and they like adopting that style. And it's like, no, actually we need etiquette for the iPhone, we need etiquette
Yeah.
for Waze, we need etiquette for
And
emojis.
like real etiquette, like the lady book talks about how you shouldn't have your cell phone at the table, and that's fair enough. But tell me how to text in a way that's real.
Yeah, good point. Well, I do think that it would be great if we had etiquette classes in school.
Absolutely. We could stand to not have trigonometry. That's the kind of that's my take on educational
Yeah, drop
theory.
trigonometry, give us something useful, give us civics, give us shop, give us home ec, give us etiquette, drop math, English, art. music, cut it. It's out. And gym, obviously, we don't need that. I think we all need an etiquette lesson. David Sedaris gave a commencement speech. It's very worth listening to about thank you notes.
Oh, and that is it. And I wanted to ask you this, and I will answer before I ask. That is the number one thing that I wish I was better at in terms of my etiquette is sending thank you notes. I'm really not good at it, and it fills me with guilt. And one day the guilt will get me there, hopefully. I don't know. Is there anything in your life where you would like to improve upon etiquette wise?
Well, let me tell you first. Listen to the David Sedaris says inspiration, and also same advice as the floss. Put your
Yes, put it where,
stationery
yeah.
where you can
Oh,
see
look at
it.
that fetching stationery you've just pulled out.
I have my stationery right here on my desk. It's very easy to, I think I've made some progress with thank you notes in the past couple years. Not obviously where I would like to be with it. Yeah, is there something etiquette wise that I would like to work on? So much, so much. I can be quite rude. I can be quite brusque.
Brusque. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a way of delivering a message like, I just did this recently. I don't know. Sometimes when I like have something to say, I forget to bracket it with please and thank
Niceties.
yous. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it can, and I really don't mean it. Obviously, sometimes I'm like in a bad mood and I'm brusque that way when I do mean it. I'm like
Mm-hmm.
frisky, but also like sometimes I'm an email with no exclamation points and it can be interpreted as brusqueness. So I want to, I'd love to work on that a little
Yeah,
bit.
but also we should give each other grace in
It's all
terms
about
of
that grace.
ooh. Okay, so is etiquette how to be? I think yes to a point. I
Yes.
can't always say yes to a point, so I'm just gonna say yes.
Let's be kind to each other. Let's be considerate. Let's spit like a man.
And let's remember the most important etiquette rule, which is to make other people feel comfortable.
Yes, like the unsinkable Molly Brown did for Jack. That was really a great show of true class.
Absolutely, it came the beginning of the episode to the end, full circle. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Rory.
Thank you for this conversation, Matt.
Thank you so much
Oh,
for
thank
being
you.
my friend.
Thank you for being my friend.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.